I'm going to play what Donald Trump announced when it comes to tariffs.
145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to there. We were talking about fentanyl, where various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride.
This is, of course, Donald Trump. He says one thing, does another all of the time. What is the trajectory of this trade war as you have seen it? What does it mean?
Well, I mean, on many levels, this was eminently predictable. First of all, it is very old news when a powerful economic player runs out of their dominant position, discovers that others seeking to compete with their dominance have outdone them. The formerly small producer figures out how to beat the big one by making the product cheaper or making the product of a better quality. That's what every business that comes up tries to do. You start small, and as you get successful, you target bigger and bigger competitors until you become the dominant one yourself. That's the story of the United States. We were an unimportant corner little piece of the British Empire, producing a very few things at the low end of technology and then shipping them like cotton to England, where they made all the textiles and all the clothing and all the rest. And the reality is the little guy becomes dependent on the big one, wants not to be dependent, realizes that they have to outcompete the big one if they're ever going to get that big themselves. And what the United States did to Britain, the Chinese have recently done to the United States. It was in the cards. It should have been foreseen. It should have been understood. But a generation or two of Americans preferred to deny all of that history, to not look at it, to not ask the obvious question, can what we did to Britain be in turn done to us? Had they asked that question in any kind of serious way, the unambiguous answer would have been yes. It's really not a question of whether, it's mostly a question of exactly when and how. And the when and how has now arrived. China is the agent of this thing. China has set itself the goal. By the way, Japan did it before. Japan came out of World War II destroyed and set itself the goal, for example, how do we become once again an economic powerhouse, which they had been before? And their answer was, what is the most successful product in the West? Answer, the automobile. What is it we have to do to regain our power? Answer, produce an automobile better or cheaper or both than the United States. Hello, that's what Toyota is. That's what Nissan is. That's what fill in the blank. They did it. Took them decades to do it. They used the government working closely with huge Japanese corporations like Toyota or Mitsubishi or Nissan or Mitsui to do that. And the Chinese have now done them one better. And by the way, the Chinese also focused not on the fossil fuel car so much, but on the electric car. And guess what? In the world today, the best, cheapest electric vehicles come from China. They did it. And not just in cars, but that's what we're seeing. And that means the United States has a choice. It can try to squelch, to stop, to undercut the Chinese. That's one way to respond. And the other way is to say, that doesn't usually work, which is true. And maybe what we ought to do is sit down with the Chinese, have them teach us what they've figured out that they can do better than we do, We still have much to teach them, and maybe we can work out a way. You know, the British tried to stop the Americans. That's the Independence War we celebrate every 4th of July in this country. The British failed. They tried a few years later, the War of 1812. They were beaten again. Then they stopped trying. With nuclear weapons, we don't have that luxury. We can't do that. That will destroy everything. So maybe we ought to understand and say what Mr. Trump, what you saw yesterday, was having done his usual grandstand bloviating about China. I'll hit him with a tariff and all of that theater, which I know is important for him domestically, politically with his base. But as a strategy, it's a stone cold loser. And somewhere, somebody is letting him know, this is not going to work. The whole world, let me underscore it this way. Ever since he started playing with the tariffs, every company that either sells to or buys from the United States is looking to do less business in the United States and more business everywhere else. Because let's remember, no other country is heaving tariffs at everybody. China isn't doing it. Russia isn't doing it. India isn't doing it. Brazil isn't doing it. Hello, we're the only ones. And we're not that important anymore. If you look at China and the BRICS together, that's a bigger, wealthier, and much larger market than the United States has been, is now, or will be. And therefore, the logic is back away if you're the producer of something sold in the United States. Go find your market somewhere else. The rest of the world will buy Mexican avocados, There's an interest in avocados. They don't have to come to the United States. Canada has electricity to sell. The Chinese need it. They can cut a deal with the Chinese. The United States is doing things whose end result, in my opinion, will be the economic isolation of the United States. And that will not be a road to prosperity, quite the opposite.
Well, Richard's right. The United States is the only country that has actually weaponized its foreign trade and its foreign currency and the dollar. But Danny, after your happy talk about China somehow Trump promising to renegotiate tariffs, Treasury Secretary Besant chipped in, and the Wall Street Journal just reported that he dismissed report that Trump was going to unilaterally lower taxes for negotiations, but said that the final determination is going to be fluid and several options. And a senior White House official just told the Wall Street Journal that, yes, the China tariffs are likely to come down to roughly between 50 and 65%. And the administration will consider a tiered approach, similar to the one that the House committee has suggested for China last year. 15% levies on items that the United States doesn't look at a threat to national security, like the toys and consumer goods exported to Walmart by China that keeps American retail prices down. But 100% for items deemed as strategic to America's interest. And the White House said, President Trump has been clear. China needs to make a deal with the United States of America. Well, that was the lead item in the Wall Street Journal and the others today. The stock market is up 4% yesterday and today. We're talking about Wednesday, the 23rd of April. 4% is an amazingly high jump. It's rolled back much of the panic after Trump's speech last week. And it's as if somehow everything's gone back to normal and we're all friends again. Has Trump made irreversible changes in U.S. policy, in world trade, and world finance? That's really the key. Can all of this be rolled back and the stock market can go up again and interest rates can go down again and everything's good? Well, the price of gold has not gone down. That's still up over $3,500 an ounce. And the real question is China going to make a deal? Is President Xi going to call President Trump and says, gee, I'm so glad you're only taxing us 100% on anything having to do with national security. And since you said again and again, President Trump, that China, we are your existential enemy, then everything is national security. Do you really expect China to cancel its export controls on rare earth, on metals, and key products that the United States needs? The United States has a 6-month supply of rare earths, and it takes about 5 years to put together a rare earth mining and refining process on all of the rare earth ores that the United States itself has out west. Maybe Trump will ask Japan to share its own reserves. A few years ago, when China blocked rare earth exports to Japan, they saw what was coming, and once they renewed economic relations, Japan built up a huge stockpile. The United States didn't do a stockpile. The United States really believed that China doesn't have any choice except to rely on the United States. And that somehow these threats to the Cold War, despite that are made by Congress and by Trump and by his whole staff again and again, saying China's our number one enemy, that China will think that's only rhetoric for domestic consumption. It doesn't look like that China is going to really say reverse what it's been doing. It's the logic of China is to say, okay, you've the deals that you've made regarding Russia, trying to set Europe against Russia to drain it, so that you can keep all of your military forces that you're withdrawing from Poland, withdrawing from Europe, and put them in the China Sea, in the Philippines, in Japan against us. We realize that your intent to go to war with us. Your military has said there's going to be war by 2026. That's next year. So I don't think we're going to lower our tariffs against you, and we're not going to somehow begin exporting the goods that you need to make your military armaments to attack us, as you've just said. We'd be crazy to sell you the rope to hang us with, as Lenin phrased it in a different sense many years ago. So it looks like if China's the designated enemy because it's been so successful that its size and its industrial power gives other countries in BRICS and Asia, Africa, and Latin America an alternative to reliance on the dollar that they never had before. Certainly not 70 years ago at the Bandung conference. So the question is, what really has changed? I don't think that much has changed, and the market is sort of in a dream that somehow everything can be negotiated as if there were not a Cold War. But it's all about the Cold War, and it's all about Trump keeping the tariffs even at 10%, and the threats of keeping the tariffs against Europe and other countries up to 40 to 50%. He said, well, yes, it's true. I can roll them all back, but other countries are going to have to give us a give back, something that we want in exchange for not raising tariffs and disorienting all of their foreign trade and causing a depression there. The number one thing they have to give us, they have to impose sanctions upon China. They have to agree not to trade with China and to isolate it. Well, this is not going to lead China to take a peaceful position towards the United States. And then Trump says, and they're going to have other countries that agree to will lower the tariffs on them. They will have to finance the Cold War. They will have to take over the costs of their own defense. So that England and all of Europe is going to have to spend, I think Mr. Merz in Germany has said 800 billion euros is going to be for making arms so that we can protect ourselves from the Russian army marching right through Poland and Germany and France to the shores of England, losing 50 million soldiers. We have to protect against this huge invasion that is imminent. We're still in the fantasy world, but it's a fantasy world that Trump is insisting to create bizarre economic rules that are just as serious as the tariffs that he's threatening on other countries. It's a reorientation of their foreign trade. And as Richard just said, they're going to begin trading amongst each other. They don't need the United States, and Trump has ended up isolating the United States itself in its attempt to isolate China, Russia, and every other country that's deemed an enemy.
To make it concrete, I did this little calculation, very obvious. I added up the GDP, the gross output of goods and services in one calendar year, the GDP of China and the other BRICS nations. I just added it up to get a sense of how big an economy they are. And then I did the same. I added up the GDPs of the so-called G7. That's the United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy. In other words, the big other of the Western economic capitalist system. Well, the G7 added up GDPs come out to about 28% of world GDP. But China and the BRICS come out to about 35%. So people should understand that China and its allies, the victims of the tariff war the United States has launched, is a much bigger, richer economic unit than the United States and its allies. And these are allies that are now angry at the United States in various degrees because they've been hit by the tariffs too. To see the same thing another way, the BRICS nations together are over half the population of the planet, whereas the United States and its G7 allies are not even 20% of the world's population, not even. So there is no context for the United States to say, we are going to punish everybody who does business with China. If China were to do the same in reverse, that's a game China is in a better position to win than we are. Why? It's like choosing to have a duel with somebody and choosing the weapon they're much better at than you are. That's ridiculous. And our policy is so driven by the denial of what has happened to the world economy, to the shrinking position of the United States amidst the rising position of China. The level of denial is why the war in Ukraine is being lost by the West. They misunderstood what, in fact, Russia could do is as a part of the BRICS. And now they're going to do the same kind of mistake with China. That's the amazing thing to watch here.
Well, Richard said that other countries are angry at the U.S., and certainly their populations are. And yet, Italy's Prime Minister, Meloni, just came to America last week to meet at the White House. And she said, number one, we're completely supporting you in the Cold War. We're going to increase Italy's GDP spent on military arms from 1.5% to 2%, and we're going to spend it there. And we're going to increase Italy's purchase of liquefied natural gas from the United States so that we don't have to depend on Russia. So you have this bifurcation that Richard and I've been speaking about, I guess, for half a year now, that the leaders of the European Union and pro-American political leaders are completely in favor of the Cold War with Russia, of isolating it, of bankrupting their economy by not importing Russian gas and oil and depending on very expensive U.S. Gas and oil. This has caused a squeeze on consumer spending throughout Europe. And normally, the governments would give subsidies, as they have been, to homeowners that need to pay much more for their electricity or for their gas, for their cooking and heating the houses. But instead, the leaders, from Merz to the European Union leaders, have said, no, we're going to spend our limited ability to run a budget deficit on military arms. So the governments are not expressing this anger. The question is, how long can the governments follow a position against the economic interest of their labor force, their consumers, their businesses, their industry, that is all having to be dismantled as a result of the Cold War dynamics that have been put in motion and that Trump is trying to find some way of sustaining.